These are the complete interviews with the subjects for the documentary Encounters. The only editing performed on the footage are camera cuts, sound correction, and minor color corrections.
That one rolling, and the way we're going to start this off is I'm going to get this so I can kind of peek on you every now and then.
Yep.
If you see, it's not that I'm ignoring you, it's just, I'm just trying to make sure everything's somewhat in focus.
Yeah.
It's dark, but it's actually a really good look the way everything is, the gold from the fire, that type thing. First of all, let's state your name and whether you approve to be on camera.
Yep, I'm Shawn Hilgers, and I approve to be on camera.
All right. The best way to, this is the way I've started off with everybody, is why are we doing this interview? What has happened?
So I got involved with some MUFON groups, and I got a little bit more comfortable with the idea of sharing an experience that I had when I was a kid. And when I was about 11 years old, maybe just turning 12, I woke up in the middle of the night on my back. And that's very odd because I've never been able to sleep on my back. I could lay awake for days on my back and not be able to sleep. And when I woke up, there was 5 silhouettes around my bed. Like, all I could see were shadows. And I couldn't convince myself that they were night terrors because I could wiggle my head around and I could move my eyes around freely. So,
did you have sleep paralysis otherwise?
Yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, I could feel. I just couldn't move.
Right.
But,
How tall were the figures?
I would have to guess probably about 4.5 feet tall. Pretty similar in height, all of them. I don't think I couldn't remember much difference in their height.
Okay.
And there's 3 to the right of my bed and 2 at the foot. And one of them at the foot of my bed picked up my leg around my ankle and pricked my toe with something. And shortly after that, I fell back asleep. And actually, over the next several weeks, I noticed that my print on my toe had actually reversed in the middle of the spiral. And it eventually went back to normal, but as it went back to normal, it's like it almost formed a welt, like it was loosening all the skin around it, like it was twisted.
Right.
And then it just
kind of like if you get a water blister?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it kind of just twisted back to normal, but it took a while.
Now, did they try to communicate with you at all, or?
I don't think so. However, I didn't feel scared. And after kind of further looking into the subject, I came across a term called an interfacer. And they're able to connect with aliens mentally and emotionally. And they say that when you interface with them, what you feel, the alien feels, and what they feel, you feel. So if there was 5 of them there and all 5 of them were comfortable being around me, I think that could have rubbed off on me as well.
Right. When it pricked your foot, did you feel pain, or was it just?
It was probably less pain than getting a shot at the doctor.
Okay.
It was a little bit, like, to know I was there, but like those little blood pricks where they just prick your finger and take the blood,
right.
Like for how they do it with kids.
Okay.
It would have probably felt similar to that.
All right, and that happened. How long do you think that experience lasted, or how long did it
I
seem?
was conscious probably 20 seconds or 20 or 30 seconds. When I woke up, my room was like it was daytime, and I could see out my window. It was dark out. I could see my night light on my end table, and I could see my ceiling light, and I could see my TV. All three of them were off. So I couldn't figure out where the source of the light was coming from.
Just a glow in the
It
air.
was just a glow in the air.
Okay.
But yeah, I wasn't scared.
Now,
And
did you tell your parents about that?
it took a while. I kind of thought it was a dream at first until the welt started to appear. And when that little sore appeared on the bottom of my toe, that's kind of when I was like, wait, I remember having a dream about something with my toe. And I think back to that dream, I'm like, that must not have been a dream. I must have woken up.
Right. Now, and this was when you were 11, 12 years old.
Yep.
Have you had anything similar happen since?
Similar, no, but I have had experiences since. One time when I was coming back from work, I worked at Ocean Spray probably when I was 18 years old. And on my way home, probably 3:30 in the morning, I was driving through a cranberry marsh, and there was fog all around me, probably 50 yards out from the truck on all sides, like a ring. And as I was driving, the ring would not get any closer to me. Like, I would not get any closer to the fog. It was moving with me. And I thought that was kind of odd. And next thing I know, there's a big light that appears, it floats down from the driver's or the passenger side window and goes up, comes back down on the driver's side, and at this point it's probably arm's reach away from me and about the size of a basketball, and goes back up, back down by the passenger side window, and then it went back up again, and I didn't see it anymore after that, and the fog dissipated, and I still never made it to the fog.
The light that you saw, was it solid like a basketball, or was it kind of opaque, like an orb?
It was like a blue glow on the outside and solid white in the middle, almost like a light like that. But when you looked at it, it didn't hurt your eyes.
Right.
Like that kind of makes you squint a little bit. The yard light. It wouldn't have been as bright as that, but I still couldn't tell what was on the other side of the light.
If you could have touched it, do you think it would have been solid or?
I think it could have been solid.
Okay.
It very easily could have been solid. I couldn't see through it.
Okay.
I couldn't, see anything beyond it, really. I could see in the background, past it.
Right.
But where it was, I couldn't see through it.
Now, how long was the movement around the car?
Well, it probably spent about 5 seconds by each window. So the whole experience probably would have lasted, 5 seconds, probably another 2 seconds to get to the other side. Another 2 seconds to get to the other side.
So less than a minute, more than likely?
Yeah, about 20 seconds, maybe 22 seconds.
How did you feel when you got this light that's popping up on each side of you? What were your emotions in it?
I was kind of confused, and I was kind of doing a lot of double takes and paying attention to the road, making sure I didn't drive off the road, and then looking back at it. And
you kind of kept your speed throughout the whole thing?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The speed limit was 55. I was probably driving 40 just because I was pretty distracted, and there was no other traffic on the road.
And you were dealing with fog, yeah. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little distracted, so I slowed down to about 40.
And you said you had another, we'll call it a UFO experience too.
Yep. So one day I was just playing some video games, and my dad was outside, and he hollers into the house at me and tells me to come outside. And we looked up in the sky. There were these lights that were probably close to twice the size of the moon, a full moon.
The nickel at arm's length.
Yeah, about a nickel at arm's length. And they were not bright. It was almost like looking through a circular window at a wall that was kind of lit up by a lamp.
Right.
But a bright lamp. So you could tell you weren't looking at something that was making light directly, like a light bulb. But it definitely looked like you were looking at something that was reflecting light.
Right.
And every once in a while, in one of those little, I want to call them windows, I could see shadows in there. Not definitive enough to the point where I could say, that was a humanoid shadow in there.
Just something moving, or...
I don't even think it was moving. It could have possibly been like literally a shadow of something that was placed in front of a light that was casting a shadow on the wall inside.
How many lights were there?
There was never any fewer than 4 or 5 in a row. And they were all, fairly close to one another.
And they were in a line?
They were all in a line.
Okay.
The line sometimes had a slight curvature. And sometimes the lines were horizontal, and sometimes the lines were vertical.
Now, like when they would go from horizontal to vertical, were they blinking out, or did they move?
No, they would. They were blinking out. They'd come on like one after another, and they'd stay right there, and then they would all go off in that same order.
Okay.
And then they would appear somewhere else.
Gotcha.
But when they were in the air, when the lights were there, they were not moving. There was no sound. It wasn't bright like a flare. I couldn't figure out what they were.
Any sound, you said?
None. And I even stayed out there for probably an hour or two after the incident was over. And the incident lasted probably 3 minutes.
And you said your dad was with you on this one?
Yep. And my dad had actually seen them one other time before that.
Okay. Was that here in Wisconsin?
Yep.
Northern, or
yep,
I guess what, mid-Wisconsin?
Right. Yep, it's central Wisconsin. Right outside the back deck.
Okay.
The back door.
If you were to guess, if the light would have been beside you, how big would it have been?
I was thinking about that. I would have to say those lights might have been maybe 6 or 8 feet in diameter.
So these are big. And how high was it in the sky?
It did not look high.
Just above the canopy of the trees, or?
If the shadows that I saw could have been roughly, like a shadow from a 4.5 foot figure or even a 6 foot figure.
Okay.
I don't think if it was a window, I don't think it could have been any more than 100 feet up above the trees.
Yeah, I'm trying to picture like the nickel and.
Yeah.
So it was fairly close to you, yeah.
Yeah.
Less than 100 yards from you.
That's what it really seemed like. And
now, could you tell whether there's anything behind those? Was it just orbs?
I'm glad that you asked that, because when the orbs were appearing, the stars that would have been in between them also disappeared.
So there could be something there.
Yeah, there could have been something
so it's
that
attached
was
to something.
blocking light behind the lights. At least blocking sight of the stars.
And before we started videoing, you said this was on a new moon night.
Yeah, this was on a new moon night. There was no moon in the air that night. There was a ton of stars.
Yeah.
And that was
what you would expect on a dark night. You'll see the stars a lot better.
Especially when you're out here in the middle of the country.
Yeah. You can probably see the Milky Way pretty good here.
Oh yeah,
if you don't
we
have
can
cloud cover.
actually.
Yeah.
turn off the house lights, and actually, if we
and
step
get
in
your
the
eyes to
backyard and
adjust,
look
yeah.
up, oh yeah, you can see the glow of the Milky Way. So yeah, I could have a really good view of the stars, but there wasn't any stars in between the lights.
Now, after that happened, how did the conversation go between you and your dad?
Dad asked me if I thought that those were some type of like a military flare, because he told me that he's seen them before, and the one other time that he saw them, he did wind up seeing or hearing a military style jet in the air, but that was several minutes after the incident, and he did not see that jet drop any flares.
Okay.
After the incident. So when I was looking at it, even while I was looking at it, I'm trying to think if they were flares or not.
Right. Because your brain's trying to make sense of what you're seeing. Yeah.
I'm not so much of a skeptic. I'm pretty science oriented. If I see something that I can't explain, it's probably not in too many, known scientific databases.
Right.
I can theorize a lot of different things, and kind of off topic, but during the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I was saying that the RT-PCR test that the hospitals were all using to test for COVID, early 2020, I was saying that they couldn't differentiate between the flu and COVID, and people were all calling me a conspiracy theorist. But July 21st of 2021, the CDC releases a statement saying that the RT-PCR cannot differentiate between coronavirus and influenza. Yeah. So I'm like, oh, you guys call me a conspiracy theorist for saying that, and then the medical experts come out and say I was right.
That happens a lot here lately too.
Yeah.
As far as this last sighting with your dad, how long ago was that?
That was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. Have you had any other experiences?
Probably 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. I think I was probably 21 or 22 years old. A friend of mine was having a bad day, so I took her for a ride out in Babcock at the Sandhill Game Farm, and that's pretty close to Ocean Spray. We went out there and we saw a shooting star, but then the shooting star made a really sharp turn in the sky without slowing down. And
that's not what a shooting star does.
That's not what a shooting star does. I was looking at that, I'm like, could a piece of it broken off and maybe part of it burnt up instantly and the piece that broke off kept, but it was too sharp. It would have had to have broken off and made a 180 almost and turned the opposite direction. So I couldn't convince myself that it was a meteorite that broke up in the atmosphere either.
Have you felt at any time that
like they were checking up
government, aliens, whatever, is kind of stalking you a little bit? This, I guess, is a funny way of saying it.
Well, actually, earlier this summer I went and got my fishing license, but I wasn't sure if I had my fishing license at first, so I did a record search for me, and this record search told me I was on a government watch list. I'm saying,
so that was surprising, huh?
I got a clean record.
Yeah.
I got a fairly clean record. I got a DUI, but you don't get on a government watch list for a DUI.
Right. And you have you had thought where people kind of followed you or anything like that, or just that one instance?
I haven't noticed anybody following me, but there was one time I was talking to a friend of mine about conspiracy theories stuff, and
that's why you're on the watch list.
my phone was off, And my phone came on, and for about 30 seconds after it came on, I couldn't do anything with it. And, you know, when I noticed it was coming on, I was like, yep, time to shut up.
It's like when you mention something and then Google gives you an ad for it.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean.
Yep. And once in a while, Alexa will listen to you without you ever saying Alexa.
Right.
I get that from time to time,
Yeah.
but a lot of people do, I think, with that.
You know, and it's kind of a separate note. One of the TV companies, you know, like LG or Vizio
Yep.
or whatever, I can't remember which company it was, but this was right after smart TVs came out,
Oh.
and they had a camera on it.
Oh.
But the camera, it was not useful as far as the person that bought it.
Right.
What they found out is the TV they were getting, just like Google does and Apple does and all that, it was getting information as far as what you were watching, and it would also
It was paying attention
see
to
what
the
you're doing.
channels were
So
on,
if
making sure you're
I'm
paying
gonna
attention.
go get popcorn, it's visualizing that so that it knows what ads to send to you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, that's a completely different thing. And then aliens, of course, because big tech is into some crazy stuff too. But
Oh yeah. Well, Google's got that AI, and I think it passed the Turing test.
yeah, it's getting kind of tricky.
You're right. An AI that passes the Turing test doesn't scare me so much as maybe an AI that would fail a Turing test on purpose.
There you go. Yeah. See,
So.
that's a Twilight Zone episode.
Right?
All right. A lot of times, or well, a lot. It's said a lot, and then some of my interviews have come up to this. So I'm gonna ask this question.
Yep.
Do you think that you possibly have some type of implant or tag?
It's possible. I've never really had the resources or the finances to go and get that checked out on a whim.
Noticed anything, you know, other than your toe where it reverse print? Noticed any scratches or cuts that you didn't know about, or lumps?
No,
Okay.
But once in a while, it does feel like I'm stepping on a piece of glass, and I'll look at my toe all the time, and I'll shine the brightest light I can find on it, as many angles as I can think of, and I can't ever find that piece of glass.
Is it the same toe?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
I never actually thought about that before this.
Now you got something to think about.
Yeah.
Interview of the guy I did in Florida. He went to the podiatrist to have his, make sure I get the right foot. He had bone spurs on his right foot.
Mm-hmm.
And while the podiatrist was looking at his foot, he said, you know, there's a lump on your heel. You know about that? And he said, yeah. And he said, it's never bothered me. He said, well, you're in here anyway. Let's get it out. Mm-hmm. Well, he pulled, it's a little bit bigger than a BB, about the size of a pearl.
Oh.
He said it was gray, fleshy, and had veins to it, but it wasn't attached to the foot.
Hmm.
And ever since that was taken out, he hasn't had any more experiences.
Oh, weird.
The weird thing is the doctor obviously sent it off to see if it's cancerous, that type of thing.
Yep.
He never heard back from the doctor, so he went to go see the doctor and ask. The office was closed and emptied out.
Ooh.
And, you know, there's some, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I would love for you to stay in touch with me if you encounter more stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even
I got
like with your
number
foot,
saved.
that type thing. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I got your number saved.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't covered that you think we?
I think we got just about everything.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the interview, and you know, what I'm looking for out of this is to kind of find the commonalities of everything.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously know the brain works funny.
Yeah.
So I liken it to if I were to cheat on my wife and I get a phone call and it's got a woman's name on the phone,
Mm-hmm.
my wife is going to instantly think that as somebody else I'm cheating with.
Yeah.
And the brain's going to do that with, as part of the PTSD
Yep.
situation too.
Yep.
You experience something that's real, but then anything else that happens that's a little strange, your brain's trying to make sense of it. It's got to be that too. It's got,
Right.
and so that I'm trying to figure out, because especially abductees, they have more than one experience usually. So that's some of the stuff I'm trying to figure out. And of course, everybody's going to pass the lie detector test because they believe it, you know, and that's what I'm finding. They're sincere, like what you are tonight. So that, yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'm going to cut the cameras off. I'm going to tell you my story real quick.
Sounds good.